Like the mere fact that I was choosing people who were unavailable meant that I myself was also unavailable. You're the golden red tide, got the strength to carry on, won't go, my child, walk on. Hello, beautiful soul family. Britt Cannon here, host of the Walk On podcast, the podcast where I try to demystify spirituality, personal growth and healing, and whatever else I feel like talking about. I already said that I'm your host. This week's episode is called Conscious Coupling, and it's about this idea, this truth, that before we heal, before we become aware of our wounds, our unconscious desires, how we are playing out the same dynamics of our childhood trauma in our adult relationships, how our attachment trauma can sabotage our relationships or sabotage our prospects and purposes and just experiences of life. And how once we begin healing, we really start to empower ourselves with this idea of choice. You know, I've done a few videos on like unrequited love or narcissistic relationships or abuse dynamics. And I think the concept of choice really plays into those in the sense that I used to find the idea of like romance, like rom-com romance, the running, the chasing, the like, this relationship is bigger than the two of us. And like, no matter what we're up against, come hell or high water, like we're going to be together, even if we ruin each other in the process. Like I really did used to kind of, resonate with those kinds of stories. And I know like I know people who've always had healthy attachment are like, oh, come on. But it's just true. Like that's what I thought love was. I thought that love and friendship were like ride or die. I thought that my relationship with work needed to be all consuming. I would go and go and go until I burnt out in every possible relationship capacity of my life. And that romanticization of toxicity, of codependence, of loyalty to a fault felt good to me. It felt like family. It felt like home. And that brings me to the first point, which is that, you know, when your childhood home wasn't safe, wasn't supportive, wasn't loving in the way that you needed, people that feel like home as an adult are usually what we're attracted to, but it from a healthy healing perspective is usually a red flag. So like someone that felt like home to me in my pre-healing state would have been someone unavailable, avoidant, maybe even someone who like wasn't even able to be physically around. Over and over, I manifested relationships either where the person was emotionally unavailable in the sense that they just were like a sort of withdrawn person and didn't know how to open up to me, unavailable in the sense that they were super controlling of me and my behavior, like very jealous, very like limiting in a lot of ways. Like they didn't want me to grow. They were so fearful of me making progress in my life because they thought that meant that I would leave them. And that very thing became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Or unavailable in the sense that they weren't interested in me, or unavailable in the sense that they were just physically not able to be with me. This played out in multitudinous directions, but any way you slice it, any way it played out, there was an unavailable component to all of my relationships. And a lot of times I was also unavailable, right? Like the mere fact that I was choosing people who were unavailable meant that I myself was also unavailable. And I didn't realize that these people felt so familiar, that we had this like magical thinking, cosmic connection, because they reminded me of home. They reminded me of my family. They reminded me of the people who abused me when I was young, who who taught me through their actions that this was what love was and that this was the best that I could expect in my life. As I began healing, I started to unpack those choices. I won't say that it was an easy or a short process. I talked about in my unrequited love or limerence video, like how to know if it's limerence. I can't remember the title. So profesh. But I'm going to do a whole series on limerence in pop culture and like how to get through limerence, because it was my biggest addiction, was unrequited love, romantic love, the search, the quest for, the belief in, the mystifying of, like, I had a lot of magical thinking in regards to romantic love, in the sense that even when I was in a relationship, like even when for all intents and purposes I had love, I was always still looking for love and like just totally unsatisfied and very prone to limerent behavior. Always stuck on the person who wasn't stuck on me, even if I had someone who was stuck on me while I was stuck on someone else. And so on and so on and so on. And so it was my most enduring addiction, and it was the one that took me the longest to unpack, because similar to having an eating disorder, you know, it's hard to kick a habit that is rooted in something that you have to do to survive. And like, love is a basic human need. Love is something that we all desire. That's why I think it's so silly to be avoidant and like pretend like you don't want love or you don't need love, because everyone does. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you silly or superficial or whatever. Like, everyone needs love. Everyone needs to be loved. Everyone deserves to be loved. Everyone is love inherently. And so it was really hard for me to untangle my magical thinking with love and my unrealistic expectations with the innate desire and like the perfectly reasonable feeling that I wanted partnership and good friendship and deep abiding love. This came for me in the form of, the spiritual community knows, like the whole twin flame, soulmate, karmic partner nonsense. I think that that's a really unhealthy thing to believe in. And I say that from experience, because it kept me stuck in many situations that I had no business being stuck in and that I should have let go long before I did. If I wasn't already prone to limerence, that definitely would have caused it. But because I was already prone to limerence, it just exacerbated an addiction to love that I already had. I've talked about it before, but I even got told off by one of my ninth dimensional spirit guides for having a preoccupation with love, and that it was really holding me back. There were several like moments of reckoning I had with my addiction to love that really rocked my world and caused these sort of massive tower moments for me. But I needed to experience them over and over and over again to finally get the full picture and finally release my attachment to something that ultimately didn't exist. On the flip side of that, as I've healed, as I've become more conscious, as I've become more awakened, as I've really interrogated and investigated my wounds and tended to my inner child and really worked to soothe them and get to know them and realize what they needed to feel safe and stable, realize what I needed to feel safe and stable, realizing like that it's actually pretty clear when someone is into you, when someone wants you, when someone values you, and when someone's abusing you. Like, there's literally, I know it feels I know it feels a little like jarring to hear, but like when someone's into you, they show the fuck up. Like when someone wants to be with you and wants to form a partnership with you and they're healthy and they're real and they're there, like they don't run. They don't make you chase them. They don't play games. They don't wait 45 minutes to text you back. Like, it's, of course, like, people get busy. It's a good thing to be involved with someone who's not always attached to their phone. Like, there is reasonable expectations as far as texting back and stuff, but like, I don't think anyone should get mad if someone misses a text message, for example. Sometimes that just triggers our abandonment issues, and it's a me problem and not a we problem. But that being said, if someone repeatedly abandons you when they know that's an issue for you, like if at the first sign of trouble, they run for the hills for a month or 2 months or 9 months or whatever, that's a pretty good sign that maybe they're not as into it as you are. You shouldn't be waiting for someone. You should be there with someone, standing still, dealing with each other, handling the problems together, being on the same team, feeling like you're on the same team. And that is actually pretty clear once you can like clear out your own brain fog that is fueled by trauma that is making everything really hazy and confusing. Sometimes getting to clarity requires a sacrifice in the form of these unhealthy relationships. Sometimes it requires a withdrawal, a prioritization of the self, of healing, of dealing with these kinds of traumas. And like, as with any addiction, it might require a stepping away, like a taking yourself out of the game for a minute in order to reorient yourself and like get your shit together. And once you do that, you come back into the game with a heightened awareness. And bringing me to the point of the whole episode, which is consciousness, choice. I have come to learn that the most romantic thing is choice. The most like rock solid foundation for any relationship is choice. I choose you. You choose me. I am going to continue choosing you. I used to live in fear that the end of a relationship, like this falling out of love thing that I had experienced so many times over, was just like just this sense of doom of the other shoe dropping, that the other shoe was always going to drop, that everything always had to end, that everything was always finite, and, that it was inevitable that a relationship was going to grow apart. And then I would live in fear of that because of my abandonment issues. And now I realize that there is, if you're meant to outgrow something or someone, or you grow in different directions, like, that's okay. It's okay for things to end. It's okay to walk away if something doesn't feel right for you anymore. It's okay to part as friends. Like, that can happen, and you can have heartbreak and gratitude at the same time. But things don't always have to end messy or badly. They can end with respect if both people are on that same page and making a choice, not just like having to split apart because you kind of hate each other and it's gotten really messy and toxic and you have to cut somebody off or something. It can end really peacefully and mutually. But I also know that all of my relationships that sort of fell apart, it wasn't as sudden as it felt sometimes. Like, it was always a series of choices that led to a rift that was ever widening until it got so far that the tether that was the relationship, that was any kind of connection we have, snapped. And we were simply two people who used to be in love who weren't anymore. And so this idea of choice comes with a lot of empowerment. It comes with the co-occurrence of discernment, which is your greatest tool. It's your greatest protector. It's such a wonderful, just, I want to say weapon, but not even weapon, just like defensive tool. It's like a shield that you have with you that protects you from situations that would not normally be good for you. Where I used to, I sort of felt like I was just clinging on to whoever was paying me attention, or I thought I was so deeply unlovable that I would kind of settle for anyone who was also settling for me. Neither of us were waiting for someone who aligned with our values, who seemed on the same page as us, who liked us mutually and reciprocally. Like, a lot of my relationships were kind of like, All right. And then I would live in fear that, like, oh my gosh, I think he's settling for me. I think I'm settling for him. Come to find out, I wasn't even straight. You know what I mean? Like, that is the expectation of people, of society, that like you better meet someone before a certain age or it's over for you. And you better meet your sweetheart in college and lock them down and marry them and start having babies, otherwise what the fuck are you doing with your life? It's this pressure, this expectation that causes people to settle. And that's not to say that everyone who gets married young is settling, it's just to say that a lot of people do. And that's also not to say that you can't make it work. Any relationship is salvageable if you can access vulnerability and communication and care, and you work as a team. But it is difficult to transition a relationship from a place of unhealthy into a place of healthy, but not impossible, just difficult. So the romance of choice. It's my favorite new discovery. It's one of my favorite things about maturity. It's so funny how like the more spiritual I get, the more grounded I become. Like it's this unexpected side effect of presence and like consciousness and knowing how to deal with my ego and know when it's flaring up and not being afraid of my triggers and not projecting them outwards, is that I become less, I want to say like delusional, but that feels like mean and judgmental. I just become more grounded and more based in reality. Like if my 22-year-old self could talk to me at 34, I would think that I was a little cynical, but it's not cynicism. It's just, it is what it is. It's just a release and a surrender to the moment, to the situation. And the reality is there's nothing more powerful than choice. Choice is what empowered me to walk away from relationships that were not good for me. Choice is what put me on the path of pursuing my purpose on this planet. Choice is what made me take inspired action, in service of my healing. And choice is what led me to the partnerships and the friendships that I have today, which are based on mutual respect, mutual affection, autonomy in ourselves, a certain independence of spirit, a commitment to healing on all parties involved, and a depth of understanding, a real presence, communication. Everyone is sober, or at least like doesn't have issues with dependence on anything, because everyone is healing. No one's afraid of their own emotions. No one's afraid of intimacy. Everyone is standing still, looking at everyone else, going, yeah, I choose you. I see you're not perfect, and I choose you. I love you. I love who you are. I love your imperfections. I love your whole vibe. I love the energy you bring to my life, and I choose you. And I think I'm going to keep choosing you. Abram Hicks, I heard this seminar that she gave once, and she said the best way to look at relationships is to say, I kind of like you. Let's see how this goes. Like whether it's you just met 5 minutes ago or you're 20 years married, every day just wake up and go, I kind of like you. Let's see how this goes. And don't put any more pressure on it than that, because that is the beauty of choice. It doesn't have to be this like, no matter what, we're going to dig our heels in and do this, even if we hate each other by the end. No, it's just like, I choose you because you bring happiness and joy to my life, because I look at you and I feel love, because we work really well together, because I could see building a life with you or collaborating with you on a project or working for this company because I like your vibe. And it really doesn't have to be any more woo-woo, any more complicated, or any more like out of control than that. It might seem unromantic to you, but I can assure you that like because my romantic relationship is founded on choice. We choose each other. There have been no ultimatums. There has been no question of whether or not we like each other, whether or not we're in love. Each step of the way, like first kiss, there was a rundown about it. You know, we had a conversation. How does this feel to you? First signs of romantic feeling, we had a conversation. Before sex, after sex, we had a conversation. Like team meetings, discuss everything. Before we like spent what's the word? Uninterrupted time together in quarantine, there was a conversation. Every step of the way has been a choice. No one has been in the dark. No one has been confused. No one has been playing games, because that wasn't what we were building. What we were building was a relationship based first on friendship, on slow, steady movement, and most importantly, on choice. And that's not just my romantic relationship, but I will tell you, this relationship ticks off every single one of my greatest dreams and desires for what a romantic relationship, like, excuse me, what an ideal romantic relationship would be like for me. Which is, you know, there's romance, there's presence, there's passion, there's understanding. We share everything. There's a deep intimacy. We love spending time together. We make each other laugh. You know, all of those things are there. We have similar interests, but not totally identical interests. We still have our own identities outside of the union of our relationship. And all my friendships, minus the passion, I could say the same thing. You know, there's a mutual respect, a mutual understanding. There is a grounding factor of like shared interests or shared core values. All of my friends have politics that I respect. All of my friends have a kind of faith to them. All of my friends are brilliantly talented. And this whole thing is not just me bragging about my friends. It's just that this has not always been the case for me. I have had miserable experiences of relationships. I've been through physical, not physical abuse necessarily, unless you count like me carrying all the weight in a relationship. But, you know, in childhood, pretty extreme physical abuse, sexual abuse. I've been sexually assaulted many times in my life. I have had lots of friendships, especially with people who were super high conflict, super difficult. I am a recovering people pleaser, which is not to say that I've always been perfect. It's just to say that I did not have any boundaries. And for that reason, I was often taken advantage of and gave too much and then became resentful. And then I didn't like who I was. So just coming out the other side and feeling like I am empowered, I have choice, I have a say in who comes in my life and who I get rid of if they don't treat me right. Or if we're just not compatible. You know, I just don't feel the need to cling anymore. And that need to cling comes from attachment wounds. It comes from trauma. I have dealt with my fair share of rejection, which over and over again was a mirror of my wounds of rejection, right? My fear of rejection, but also a mirror of, or let's not say a mirror. It was a form of protection. There's no better way to say it than rejection is protection, you know? If someone turned me down repeatedly, it was the universe slapping my hand and saying, no, not for you. I kept going back anyway, not learning my lesson until I got burned bad enough. And then I was like, got it, loud and clear. And, you know, this idea of like, I just can't help myself. I'm so drawn to this person. This romantic notion that we have is actually deeply unhealthy. Does it inspire beautiful art? Yes. Is it a good, like, does it feel good to kind of get lost in like a relationship like that because it distracts us from our own wounds and pain for a moment? Sure. But is it the foundation for a long lasting, stable, like fulfilling experience? No. And really, like a lifelong love or long-lasting friendships, a real chosen family is what we're all after anyway. So let's unpack the toxic romance. Let's unpack the rom-com expectations, and let's really get down with choice. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you like this video. If you want to hear more, you can click the link in the description below to listen to the full episode, to read the accompanying blog. You can sign up for my self-love course if you are struggling with boundaries, if you feel like you don't know yourself, if you're not sure how to get started with unpacking those wounds and becoming conscious. You can take my self-love course. The link is down below as well. Sign up for it. That covers two tarot readings, one at the beginning to set your intention and kind of like ask the universe for guidance, which directions you should go, which things you should focus on. It's a 30-day course, so the tarot reading is kind of like good for all 30 days. It's a journal-centered course, so if you struggle with journaling or with having that kind of communication with yourself, I have prompts, I have guided meditations, I have Lordy, so many things. The course is jam-packed. Self-care rituals. It's really fun. It's really healing. I've been doing it myself, even though I designed it and I've done all this before, but I've been revisiting it because if I made it, I should take it, right? And I've been having a lot of fun and discovering new things about myself and growing more intimate with myself, and also seeing how far I've come in the, I guess, 10 years of healing that I've been doing. So if that sounds like something that you would benefit from, you can click the link below. You can also check out my music, my book, Flight of the Final Girl, which is a poetry book I wrote about my childhood trauma, explored through the lens of horror, which is my favorite genre of anything. And yeah, that's it. Give this video some love if you wouldn't mind. Tell me down below how you feel about choice, how you feel about romance, if you've been brainwashed by Disney movies and rom-coms. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work. Happy healing. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.